Tanse, I'm Cree. Welcome to APTN National News Daytime. Mi'kmaq chiefs on the East Coast say their trust in the RCMP continues to be eroded after Nova Scotia RCMP raided a number of on-reserve cannabis shops on Tuesday. According to the RCMP, Mounties raided 5 cannabis storefronts the provincial government says are illegal and seized an unspecified amount of cannabis under the Nova Scotia Cannabis Control Act. Offense tickets were also handed out. The raids happened at the Eskasoni, Bottledeck, Buckingeg, and Waikoba First Nations and the town of Digby. The Mi'kmaq chiefs say the raids have further eroded trust in the RCMP and the government, and it goes against Mi'kmaq rights. Chiefs argue that the Mi'kmaq have a historic right to grow and sell cannabis on unceded territory through the 1725 Peace and Friendship Treaty. In a public statement, Waigogama Chief John L. Bernard said, "Trust cannot exist where enforcement replaces engagement and where policing measures are used instead of collaborative problem solving. When our community members witness police entering our local businesses without communicating with Chief and Council, it reinforces historic patterns of distrust and disregard for Mi'kmaq authority." The busts come just days after the Nova Scotia government expanded its Cannabis Act to allow conservation officers to enforce cannabis laws as well. Heavier fines and minimum penalties are also included. Mi'kmaq leaders say they will reach out to Premier Tim Houston and the Nova Scotia Minister of Elnu Affairs with the focus of a nation-to-nation relationship that respects Mi'kmaq rights and jurisdiction. An agreement involving the federal government and the Musqueam Indian band that recognizes Aboriginal title over much of Greater Vancouver was in the spotlight at the British Columbia legislature. CTV's Dimitra Maragos brings us the latest.
When did the Premier become informed of the Musqueam deal that was signed by the federal government?
That has been the question on the minds of many after a landmark agreement late last month between Ottawa and the Musqueam Indian Band that recognizes the Aboriginal title over their traditional territory. Premier David Eby on Monday saying he had not been briefed on the agreement. Tuesday, he doubled down.
To be absolutely clear, received no briefings about the content of this agreement. No heads up from the federal government.
Did the federal government talk to Premier Eby about this announcement? Was he briefed?
The federal government did brief the provincial government. It was a number of weeks ago.
CTV News spoke with the Minister of Crown Indigenous Relations, who says she can't speak to the communication within the provincial government, but emphasized Ottawa kept them in the loop prior to the agreement being announced.
What it is the opportunity for Canada and Musqueam to sit down at the table and talk about what does rights and recognition look like moving forward.
The agreement lays out how Musqueam rights and title will be implemented over time, shared decision-making on fisheries, marine areas, and territorial waters.
These agreements are about co-managing and really sitting down again at the table to discuss how we can move forward together.
However, this has caused concern over private property rights, which Alti says is due to misinformation.
No private property is impacted. Private property is not on the table, private property is not being discussed, and it's clearly written in the agreement.
Wendy John, the chief negotiator for rights and title, echoed this.
No one ever said we're going to go after fee simple land. That is something that's just a non-starter.
And she says many may be conflating the Cowichan decision and this agreement.
What the law has done in this case has really created an uncomfortable place for Musqueam.
And adds Musqueam has been transparent throughout the process.
And it was never done in secret. There's no secrecy about this at all. It was announced, it was said, this is what we're doing.
Dimitra Maragos, CTV News, Vancouver.
A 15-year-old suspect involved in the Carry the Kettle quadruple homicide in southern Saskatchewan has recently pleaded guilty to manslaughter. CTV's Jacob Carr has the details.
One of the 4 co-accused in a quadruple homicide on Carry the Kettle Nakota Nation in 2025 has entered a guilty plea to 4 counts of manslaughter here at provincial court. The now 16-year-old, whose identity is protected by the Youth Criminal Justice Act, is one of 4 people charged in the February 2025 quadruple homicide of Tracy Hodamani, Sheldon Quawisance, Shauna Faye, and Terry Jack at a home on Carry the Kettle. Many friends and family of the victims were on hand to watch the proceedings, so much so that Judge James Corpin decided to move to a bigger courtroom, saying, quote, "Anyone who wants to view these proceedings should be able to." The youth who pleaded guilty was 15 at the time of the crimes. He was among the first people charged after being arrested on February 18th of 2025, along with 18-year-old Darius Reset. Both were originally charged with 4 counts of first-degree murder. A third suspect, also a youth who cannot be identified, was arrested on December 10th of 2025 and also charged with 4 counts of first-degree murder. He is set to appear in provincial court on March 27th. That youth is also facing 1 count of attempted murder stemming from an altercation between the accused and a 5th person at the home where the killings occurred. On February 5th of this year, a 4th person was charged in connection to the homicides. Lauren Elvis Hodamani is facing 1 count of accessory after the fact to murder. At the end of the day's proceedings, Justice Corpin accepted the guilty plea. Sentencing is scheduled for Friday, April 24th. Jacob Carr, CTV News, Regina.
Northern Ontario NDP MPP Saul Mamakwa was joined by First Nations at Queen's Park on Tuesday to voice their opposition to the Ontario government's plans to fast-track building a road network to the Ring of Fire. On Monday, the government held a press conference to announce plans that construction will start this June, with some roads opening as early as November 2030. Ontario has long wanted to build a road network to the North's Ring of Fire in order to access critical minerals in the region. At Tuesday's press conference, Saskatchewan Lake First Nation councillor Eugene Tate told media his First Nation is already experiencing problems with a company that is conducting exploration activities on traditional land without consent. Anishinaabe Nation Grand Chief Alvin Fiddler added First Nations aren't against development, but they must be heard and respected.
But they want Ontario and Canada and the industry to respect the relationship that they have with the Crown. And they're here to offer solutions to industry, to Ontario, to Canada. Solutions that will lead to predictability and stability in the North.
And it does affect the people of Saskatchewan Lake. My aunt, she goes to hunt there, and this past fall, it was not a healthy environment. She wasn't able to harvest, and you know, that's a painful thing when that happens in your home.
A motor vehicle collision on March 2nd near St. Paul, Alberta has taken the lives of 2 people and injured 2 others from the Saddle Lake Cree Nation. In a statement from Chief Dale Steinhauer, he says one of the women killed was a daughter of a council member. According to the RCMP, a garbage truck was traveling east on Highway 29 near St. Paul when a semi-truck turned. The garbage truck then swerved to avoid hitting the semi and crashed into an oncoming SUV carrying 4 occupants from Saddle Lake. 2 people, a 36-year-old female driver and a 44-year-old male passenger in the SUV, were both killed, while the other 2 passengers suffered life-threatening injuries and were sent to hospital. Road conditions were at times extremely difficult to drive in with snow-covered roads. Saddle Lake is located about 170 kilometers northeast of Edmonton. The city of Saskatoon has released its full point-in-time community report. In late 2025, a snapshot of the data showed a growing number of people without stable housing. Now, a more comprehensive review details who is most impacted by housing insecurity. On October 16, 2025, more than 250 volunteers counted people experiencing homelessness across Saskatoon. They recorded 1,931 people living in encampments, shelters, transitional housing, or are experiencing hidden homelessness. Most were adults aged 25 to 64. Indigenous people represented the largest group of affected people, making up 82.9% of all respondents. At a press conference, APTN asked Leslie Anderson, the City of Saskatoon's Director of Planning and Development, what discussions need to happen, given that nearly 83% of respondents are Indigenous.
It really goes back to our understanding of the systems that have led to Indigenous homelessness, the residential schools and the impact of that to our communities, and that that we continue to see. So those are the realities of the history that we have here and what we're seeing in our population. So unfortunately, it's not surprising that we continue to see that very high number of representation in our community.
We have more news after the break. Stay with us. Thanks for staying with us. A historic agreement is enhancing a cancer-fighting partnership between an Indigenous group and a nuclear plant. A $250 million loan guarantee from the Ontario government will also allow to double the production of medical isotopes. CTV's Scott Miller has the details.
Bruce Power, the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, and now the Ontario government are joining forces to fight cancer with nuclear energy.
If we believe the researchers we are working with, 80% of the cancers we have to deal with right now, either you won't have it because of the vaccine, or we will be able to cure them in less than 1 week thanks to the treatments that are being developed right here.
Since 2019, the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation and Bruce Power have partnered on a revenue-sharing agreement around medical isotope production. One isotope that sterilizes medical equipment, another that's used to treat cancer. A plan to more than double that production at the Bruce meant Sohn needed capital. In stepped the provincial government with $250 million from the Indigenous Opportunities Financing Program to guarantee the debt Sohn took on to fund their partnership stake in the expanded isotope project.
I think it's very important because it will generate revenue for communities and an expansion and an announcement that aligns with our vision and our values.
A separate revenue-sharing agreement providing $10 million per year in direct community payments from Bruce Power to Sohn, along with the medical isotope partnership, will be worth $64 million to both the Saugeen First Nation and Chippewas of Nawash Unceded First Nation by 2035, with escalating dividends moving forward.
We've had, long-standing concerns of being excluded from the benefits that, the area is receiving. And others are receiving, and we're working our way toward good relations.
The loan guarantee is the largest Ontario has given to any Indigenous group since creating the Indigenous Opportunities Financing Program in 2009.
$250 million, the largest that I'm aware of, certainly in Ontario history and perhaps in Canadian history.
Currently, Bruce Power makes 80% of the medical isotopes that sterilize medical equipment around the globe. But the kind of isotope they'll be ramping up production of with this new partnership will be focusing on targeted cancer treatment. It's called lutetium-177, which will now also be processed at Bruce Power instead of being shipped out to Germany for processing.
Roughly 200 to 300 net new jobs will be created direct, indirect through this investment as we double down on Canada's nuclear advantage. It saves lives, it keeps the lights on, 24/7 power. We are talking $250 million, but at the same time, the revenue, the dividend of this investment is going to change, have a real beneficial impact in the communities, in the two communities.
Near Kincardine, Scott Miller, CTV News.
Miss Indigenous Canada, Gina Boubard, recently took on a collaboration with Marshall Fabrics to create a ribbon skirt kits. And as APTN's Julia Ross reports, part of the proceeds from the kits are being donated to a not-for-profit organization in Winnipeg.
Marshall Fabrics has partnered with Gina Boubard, the 2025 Miss Indigenous Canada, to create 2 styles of ribbon skirt kits. Boubard says that while designing the kits, the colors chosen during the process had important meanings to them.
It was hard to narrow it down to 2 fabrics, but I chose the pink because it's kind of been my go-to color since I've won Miss Indigenous Canada. And then I chose the orange skirt to represent my family, my parents. My dad is a residential school survivor and my mom is a day school survivor. So that orange really represents healing as well as the Every Child Matters movement.
The kits feature fabrics designed by Anishinaabe artists Jackie Travers and Shannon Gustafson. Store manager Aaron Kemble says it was a great opportunity to work with Boubard and to give back to community.
Gina chose the fabrics, which was really quite a nice process, and she chose 2 Indigenous designers that we carry here in the store.
Boubard says that the kits are for Indigenous people of all ages and genders to express themselves and hopes youth show interest.
Even though the kits have the fabric and the ribbons, I'm really hoping to see some creativity and maybe some added aspects to the skirts, and to just be proud of who you are and when you're wearing the skirt.
A skirt sewn by Olga Roskoff from Clanware Creations from one of the kits is on raffle with proceeds donated to Sunshine House.
Well, Sunshine House is a 2S LGBTQ+ and BIPOC-led harm reduction community resource center. We run a variety of programs from our drop-in on Logan Avenue, where we provide hot meals, clothing donations, and harm reduction supplies, and a host of other services. We also do housing for people experiencing houselessness, exclusively for the 2S LGBTQ+ community.
Michaela Chotka, Fundraising and Community Relations Manager for Sunshine House, says the collaboration is a good fit with their programming.
We are, community-based with a focus on harm reduction, and we're just very grateful and humbled that, Marshall's Fabrics and Miss Indigenous Canada, Gina Boubard, have, come together to provide, a fundraiser that's both, culturally appropriate for us as well as, appropriate to the communities we serve.
Boubard says that giving back through ribbon skirts is special as it marks a cultural aspect for them. The kits cost around $60 each. They will be available across Marshall Fabric stores in Winnipeg, Calgary, Edmonton, and Lethbridge. Julia Ross, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
Great story, Jules. You love to see it. We have to take a short break, but when we come back, we'll tell you how the late Frida Henneque, a Cree teacher in Saskatchewan, is still creating an impact today. Stay with us. Thanks for staying with us. St. John's -6, Charlottetown +1. -24 in Nain, Cartwright -8. -1 in Quebec City, Gaspé 0 in sunny. Toronto 2, Peterborough 3. Sioux Lookout -9, Thunder Bay showers in -4. Clear skies in Churchill at -25, Thompson -22. -7 in Winnipeg, Barons River -14. -10 in Saskatoon, cloudy in Regina at -5. -30 in Uranium City, La Ronge -27. -18 in Peace River, Fort McMurray -24. -7 in Lethbridge and cloudy, Calgary -8. 6 in Kamloops, Quesnel 2. -20 in Dease Lake, Smithers +1. Old Crow -42, Mayo -23. -29 in Fort Simpson, Watee -34. Clear skies in Sax Harbor at -33, Polituck -21. -39 in Baker Lake, Chesterfield -32. And Resolute -42, Aglulic -31. The late Frida Henneque was a Cree author and educator who dedicated her life to saving the once dying Nehiwewin language. When she noticed her own children were struggling to speak or understand Plains Cree, she began working on Cree language structures, a Cree approach, which would later be published and reprinted 13 times. Now, Frida is the focus of a documentary that will have its world premiere this week at GemFest in Vancouver. For more, we're joined by the director of Cree Approach, Tristan Greyeyes. Tristan Greyeyes, thanks so much for chatting with us and congratulations on the documentary. Frida Henneque was your kukum and grandmother. Can you tell us about Frida and why you thought her important work with the Cree language would make for a great documentary?
Well, growing up, you always hear about the incredible feats your grandparents have went through. And mine just inspired me and helped me persevere through school, being a single parent. And growing up, I was told that education is what we have to aim for. And so if Cookham could do it, a high school dropout, and continue on to get her master's in Cree linguistics, then you can too. So I thought, as a hidden figure in our Indigenous and Canadian history, that her story needed to be told, and who better to tell it than her own Nosum.
Cookham Frida sure led by example, hey? And Tristan, what do you think Frida's work has meant for the language as a whole?
So she created a Cree, the Cree written structures, a Cree approach. Before that was created, a lot of people were just borrowing resources off of each other. There was no set standard that everyone could really go towards, and now because of that, it helped the language continue to thrive in a way that it hadn't really done before. And so we're all kind of like learning from that work that she did a long time ago, Gaias. And so I think that is like huge, and people just don't really understand the immense work that was done before, so that we could be where we are today. Even though it's not a great place, we're in a better place.
Yeah, no, I agree there. You're not wrong. The film A Cree Approach will have its world premiere this weekend at GemFest in Vancouver. What are you hoping audiences take away from the documentary?
Just the language loss, and how detrimental that it can be toward somebody like me, but also to my mom, but also to Nokum. Nokum, you know, her first language, her mother tongue, the language that she knows is directly tied to her culture, her identity, wasn't passed down to her children. I feel like that's so devastating. I couldn't imagine being her. And now today I can't even speak my language despite all her efforts. And I think that just goes to show, I want audiences to really get back behind policy makers and to make policies that, you know, fund Indigenous languages that they do for English language or for any other languages out there. So Indigenous languages is tied to our land, to our identity, everything, our whole perspective. It makes us proud of who we are. But if we don't know it, it's really hard to connect to your land.
Tapway, yes. And finally, Tristan, when and where can people be able to see this documentary?
Well, we're screening it again at the Surrey Sundar Prize Film Festival in Surrey, here in BC, April 24th. But we are also having our world premiere in Duluth, Minnesota, which I'm really excited to go. I want to present it in person. That will be in April 22nd. Yeah, I'm excited to go there and represent.
Right on. Well, we're all very excited for you and very proud of all the work you've done. Tristan Greyeyes is a filmmaker of the new documentary A Cree Approach that tells the story of the late Frida Henneque from the Atakakuk Cree Nation in Saskatchewan. Tristan, thank you so much for your time.
And Askman.
That's all the time we have for this Wednesday. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you again next day.